Hi friends, good morning. So, how I started with astrology, the story. So obviously I didn't start with learning astrology. I was never born in a traditional Hindu family. I had no exposure to astrology. Really, only my parents, maybe they used to check the horoscope in the newspaper, which doesn't make much sense, the 12 signs, which implies that there are only 12 types of people in the world, the 12 sun signs. So they don't make much sense. But then they used to look at that just like any other, a person. And, but I didn't have any exposure to astrology in the traditional sense. I knew nothing about Vedic astrology. But at the age of around 18, 19, I started getting into spirituality. I started getting into things like, what do you call it? Yoga, meditation, breath work, all these things, because I was increasingly seeing that there is a lack of meaning in life. And a lot of things had happened in my life. Since the age of 13, a lot of my family members died. My grandparents died around the age of 13, age of 15. Then my father passed away also around that time. So there were a lot of situations in which I was questioning the meaning of life, and then I was drawn to spirituality. Osho, Yogananda, Sri Ravi Shankar, who I had the good fortune to meet and also spend time with. So really, I had no exposure to astrology. And then what happened was, through social media, there was a social media platform called as Orkut. I don't know if you guys remember, maybe you guys are too young to remember about Orkut. So on Orkut, I found someone who was connected with spirituality, who was connected with Osho, and he introduced me to Vedic astrology, because he was a practitioner of astrology, Vedic astrology, also some elements of Western astrology. And he said, why don't you get a reading? And I got very curious about what this could be all about. The first thing he said during the reading, I remember it was in my office. I used to work for Tech Mahindra. I was a computer engineer. I was a technical associate at Tech Mahindra. So I was working as a computer engineer, as a technical associate. And I remember I just went to the breakout area, the place where you take a break, and I started the call with him. He was in Mumbai, I was in Pune, and I started the call with him. This was somewhere, in the late evening, 7:30, 8, something like that, because in the IT companies you work till late night, So I was doing the call. I had taken my pen and paper to write down stuff, and then what happened was, the first thing he said was, you've been having a very challenging time in the last few years. And I said, no, I'm not challenging. That was not challenging. So much had happened, but somehow, that awareness was not there to actually see it as something challenging happening in my life, to actually acknowledge what's happening. I'd moved to a new place, I'd started a new job, just out of college, a lot of struggles actually, and then I did not know that, I sort of didn't feel that. Also it's because of age, when you're young, you're more resilient, you are not so much having a concept of what is good, what is bad, how it should be. Also because of that, but generally there wasn't an awareness that I'm going through a tough period in life, that this is one of the tough periods in life. I did not know that. And that is the case with many people who come to astrologers. You say career is tough, they say no, career is not tough, it's going well, I have a job. Having a job doesn't mean career is not tough, career is not challenging. right? So that awareness, that was brought to my awareness for the first time. And then we spoke about different aspects. His suggestions were very holistic. We spoke about career, what gives fulfillment. And the important insight that he gave me was that boredom can create excellence in the long run, but eventually your calling is to work with people. My calling was to work with people. And I always had this very strong, inclination towards teaching. So he said teaching is something which will be much more interesting for you. Even though the boring computer engineering job will also produce results in your life eventually, but teaching is something more interesting. And also working with groups that are spiritual is more interesting. And going from a computer engineer to becoming an astrologer to getting into organizing so many hundreds of spiritual events, working with hundreds of spiritual teachers, that came after all of this, that otherwise I never had that direction. I was doing some stuff for myself, but I didn't know that, I am going to be a sort of organizer and change maker in this area. So it sparked off a completely new possibility for me. Then he suggested to me also to go for the Landmark Forum. Because Landmark Forum is a group, it's a process, it's a program where you really look into taking responsibility for your life. How can you take responsibility for your life? It's a lot about communication. It's a lot about the way you look at things. So he suggested me to do that because my work was supposed to be with groups, and I didn't know that. I just became a computer engineer, and that's what happens, right? You have certain talents, but in India, most of the time in those days, at least, I'm talking, this is about 18, 19, 20 years ago. So this people would tell you to do medicine or engineering if you're smart enough, And of course, I was very good at mathematics. So I would score in the 90s, 90 out of 100, 95 out of 100. So they thought, this is a good thing, good fit for engineering. And I did engineering. Though I did not completely like it. But my dad was like, okay, you do engineering and afterwards you can see what you want to do. And astrology actually helped me, it saved me, it helped me to find the direction, which is my true purpose. And that's what I tell people, unless you know your script, astrology gives you the script. Unless you know your script, how are you going to play your part? So I was clueless as a computer engineer, what to do. Like it was just boring, it was not fulfilling me. Of course, other people found some sense of purpose in it, I don't know. They were part of that rat race, which was fine for them, it worked for them. And it gave them fulfillment, coming to office, chatting with colleagues, doing a little bit of work, playing the office game. But that was not interesting for me. And I knew it wasn't for me right from the first 1 or 2 weeks of the training actually. Because engineering colleges don't teach you everything. So the companies, the IT companies which hire you, they give you a training for 3-4 months. And they grind you completely. They put you through 10-15 hours a day. There are a lot of tests. You are taught new technologies. So things like that. It was a good training. But I knew in the first 2 weeks, I remember there was a time when I went to the washroom and I clearly knew that this is not for me. This is not for me. This is not for me. And logically, I did make a plan B that I will get into teaching, which I eventually also did. I taught at a engineering college. So, yeah, so astrology, the first reading itself gave me a direction. It also told me that about money, it told me about abundance, it told me a lot about my potential, how I can shine. Then I asked a very important thing which every young person asks is about relationships, about finding a lover, a partner, things like that. And he was very clear, my astrologer at that time. He was very clear. He was also my first teacher. He was very clear that you will find someone, you will be comfortable with someone who is spiritual, you know, and you will find someone through the service that you do. It is not that, you know, you go to parties and find women or things like that. It is your purpose, it is your work, and it is your spirituality that will lead you to the kind of people you will meet in relationships. And that pattern has been exactly accurate again. You know, it has been very true for me. So what I feel is, if you have a correct date of birth, birth time, birthplace, you're going to get these kind of insights. And from being a computer engineer, I was completely propelled into something, into the world of astrology, which is completely unconventional, which doesn't make any logical sense. You know, how does a computer engineer become an astrologer without any traditional background, without any exposure? But this whole understanding that I will do well in helping others, I will do well in a helping profession, I will do well as a leader of people, as a guide to people, that is what opened this whole dimension. And then, as I say always, you know, it's not one reading that can make the difference. How much can the astrologer tell you in one reading, right? You cannot know a person and everything about him in one reading. So I kept in touch with my astrologer, who became my teacher of astrology. And the way he taught me, within 1 or 2 days, I was able to look at charts and make sense, astrology charts. So what I believe is that this was innate, you know, this was an innate talent. Some people, they pick up an instrument and a little bit they need to see, and then they start playing that instrument, right? They start playing that instrument because they have it inside them, you know, it's innate. Now some people might say it is past life, some people might say it is genetic, whatever it is, but it was inside me. And I could quickly interpret charts after just 1 or 2 days of learning. I remember I went to Mumbai and learned from him with a small group of people, and then I started doing readings for people in my office. This was very long back. And yeah, so astrology can propel you into things, into a life which you could never imagine with your limited social inputs, limited family inputs. You know, so that I saw, I clearly saw that. Okay, so yeah, so knowing that script, knowing that direction which astrology gives, helps us to play our part better. And I've seen this now, I've seen more than 3,000 charts, and I see that, you know, people demonstrate those patterns. Of course, they may not have sustained contact with me because they don't want to book continuous sessions or something like that. But I see that in their life whenever they give me feedback. Sustained contact happened for me with my teacher afterwards when I started learning from him. Constantly I was giving feedback, and he was sharing new and new and new insights, you know. At one point he told me that you will be someone who can manage or organize some kind of spiritual resorts. He also suggested me to voluntarily organize spiritual events, bring spiritual teachers to Goa, and I started something called a spiritual Goa. And during those days there was hardly any spiritual stuff in Goa. I'm not talking about the hippies on the beaches, but I'm talking about the local population. In the cities there wasn't much. So spiritual Goa I started. Then he said, yes, it looks like your trajectory, your best option in some way is to organize or manage something spiritual. And eventually I did that. Actually, I went to Zorba the Buddha in Delhi. It's one of the largest spiritual centers in India, and I was heading the digital marketing there. It just happened, you know, it wasn't really planned. It just happened when I was traveling to North India. I was in Dharamshala, things like that. So that also happened. It was a very rich exposure over there, and it gave me the conviction that I can do something to help people using astrology, using healing, using spiritual means. And so I think astrology has really, sort of taken me into that new dimension, as I said. So yes, if you have any questions, if you want to talk about this, how astrology can bring transformation to your life. Astrology is not just about predictions. Predictions will come true. There are predictions, they will come true. A lot of them will come true, 60 to 70%. We can never say 100%. But also, it is about possibilities. It is about people who are, how to find your potential, how to find your purpose in life. Now see, there's someone who's commented on this post. He's saying government job or private job. So this is how we, make bad use of astrology. We ask very limited questions. That is why we don't know our purpose in life. Because we are fixated with what society tells. Now this person from somewhere in Andhra Pradesh, he wants to know whether he will get government job or private job. So he thinks a job is everything in life. So he wants to get stuck up in the rat race and things like that, because that's all they know. I don't blame them. That's all they know. And they want to know whether there's a yoga like Gaja Kesari. So they are stuck up in these ideas of government job, private job. Their society has conditioned them, So we have to go beyond this conditioning, explore what is this real possibility of this soul. That is very important. So, guys, I wish you all the best. And if you like my story, thanks for listening for such a long time. If you like my story, then yeah, definitely connect if you want an astrology reading. But my style of astrology is not doing predictions, Kiran. It is about telling you what is the script of your life, what is the direction of your life, what is the essence of your life. And from there we go, because we want you to experience, I want you to experience the highest possibilities of your life. Okay? So thank you everyone, and all the best for have a wonderful Sunday. Cheers.